Oh, misty eye of the mountain below, keep careful watch of my brother's souls. And should the sky be filled with fire and smoke, keep watching over Durin's son. If this is to end in fire, then we shall all burn together. Watch the flames climb high into the night, calling out, Father, oh, stand by and we will watch the flames burn over on the mountainside. And if we should die tonight, we should all die together. Raise a glass of wine for the last time, calling out, Father, oh, prepare as we will watch the flames burn over on the mountainside. Desolation comes upon the sky. Now I see fire inside the mountain. I see fire burning the trees, and I see fire hollow in soul. I see fire blood and I breathe, and I hope that you remember me.
I very much love that song. Although I have to make my co-host here for this evening promise not to sing it too much. Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special edition of the Radulich and Broadcasting Network's Movie Review Club. We've kind of been off since the summer because, Mark doesn't watch many movies after the summer blockbuster season, but The Hobbit came out today, technically, and darn if we weren't going to do this. I'm your host, Robert Winree, and thank you also very much for joining us and listening in. We could have done this yesterday. Mark and I both saw the marathon on Monday evening, so we could have had a very early review for you guys for this one. Now again, Mark, no singing, all right? You got to promise me no singing.
I see fire.
Damn it!
Sorry about that. You know what? Your God punished me. You told me no singing. I refused to listen to you because I'm the boss, and then I choke.
Full disclosure, I will, for you and everyone else out there listening, I am dealing with kind of a throat cold. So if my voice starts giving out, that's what it is. Just full disclosure, I'm going to go, and I don't anticipate any problems, but in the unlikely event I find myself unable to speak, that's why, and it's not my untimely demise. One would hope, at least. All right. Mark, you loved this movie from everything that you've been putting out on social media and what have you. So why don't you go ahead and give us the intro into this thing?
Okay. It's by no means a perfect movie. There's plenty to dissect. There's plenty to say that's wrong with it. But I would say that a lot of the reviews that I'm reading are a little harsh. I was not bored by this movie. A lot of the reviews that I'm reading it was boring. It's a 2-hour fight scene. That's not correct either. The fight scene is the whole Battle of Five Armies. I think they clocked in at about 40 minutes.
I actually could have used more of it.
Well, I'm just wondering how long the Battle of Pelennor Fields was from Return of the King. Because if you want to talk about a fight scene that goes on forever, yeah, I mean, not that the Battle of Pelennor Fields was not good, but when you consider the losing and the trying to regaining of Minas Tirith, and then the Battle of Pelennor Fields, and then finally the last charge of Mordor, I mean, Jesus Christ, that you know, the 2/3 of that movie is spent fighting. So for people to bitch about the Battle of Five Armies being 40 minutes of fighting and that being too long, I think it's a bit misplaced. I would tell you that if I had to sum this movie review up in one sentence, it was a love letter to Tolkien, his works of literature, the fans, and the franchise. It was the last goodbye, and that's how I took it. And as a side note, I think a lot of reviewers are too full of themselves. You know, they are Prius drivers who think their farts don't stink. To harken back to his South Park reference, because I was sitting next to a girl who was there at the marathon. I didn't know her, and throughout the movie, as our hero started to die off one by one, she went into hysterics. I mean, if movies are to make you feel something, you know, that is the measure of a good movie. No movie is perfect, or at least very few of them are. But if the measure of a good movie is one that makes you feel something, I can tell you that many in the theater, felt the tragedy of the fallen heroes, you know, the triumph of Bilbo, and were brought to bear by the end of it. And if this girl is any measure of the rest of the fans out there, I mean, like I said, she was brought to hysterics with every death. She was inconsolable by the end of the movie. And I know that when Lord of the Rings was over, you know, there was a part of me that wanted it to go on. And I will tell you that I'm satisfied now. After 6 movies, you know, and in this last one, and I'll throw it back to you, Robert, after this, the best thing I can say about the Battle of Five Armies is it was a great way to say goodbye to the franchise. I don't need to see any more Tolkien movies.
I'm with you, and that's not just because I'm not a fan of Tolkien. I'm not, by the way, but by and large. Now, this was a great... I mean, the supreme irony there being that he ends this movie setting up Fellowship of the Ring in terms of pure chronology, because that's what it's supposed to do. But the fact that I kind of walked out of this movie like you, with a sense of, you know, fulfillment, completion, closure, whatever you want to call it, despite the fact, despite the fact that narratively speaking, they're setting up. They end this with like the first few lines of dialogue from Gandalf and Bilbo in Fellowship of the Ring, and I still felt like, no, that, you know, we're okay. This is it. This is gone. It's a very kind of bittersweet sensation, but at the same time, it's done. You know, I mean, I don't think there will ever be any more Tolkien movies. I mean, certainly not if that jag-waste Christopher Tolkien has anything to say about it, but that's a completely different topic. No, I felt that this was completely, you know, closed, that it was a really nice send-off for the whole kind of cinematic world of Middle-earth that will, again, I don't imagine we'll get any more Tolkien movies for another... I imagine they'll remake, like, Lord of the Rings in 30 or 40 years, probably. But we're not getting anything new. None of the other intellectual properties have been sold the rights to make movies out of them. And again, the Tolkien estate is kind of headlined by a guy who is just so severely anti his father's work being turned into films that, this was it. This is kind of there's a reason they've been promoting this with the One Last Timeline, because it really is. I mean, I don't think we're going to see any other, again, Middle-earth movies for, you know, decades, if we get them at all. And I'm not saying we need them, mind you, but, you know, again, decades at the very least would be my guess. Unless they decide to reboot the franchise and we get the whole thing remade all over again, which would be a monumental failure. But, hey, it's Hollywood. What are you going to do? You got to throw out these stupid caveats.
Please don't put that out in the universe. We're good.
Hey, I don't want it. I just said it would be a monumental failure.
No, but once you put it out into the universe, we all know that there are executives listening to this podcast and interns listening to this podcast, and someone's going to say, hey, retain the rights to Tolkien because we're going to want to remake this in a few years.
I said decades, not years.
They're not listening that closely. Come on, let's get on with this.
All right. Well, okay, let me ask you this then, to move on to my next point, because I have issues with this, but I want to talk about the good things first. I don't know what it was about. Maybe I had to watch all three of these in sequence. Maybe it was just finally written properly. But is it just me, or is Martin Freeman a darn good actor?
Yeah, his portrayal of Bilbo over the course of three movies, I thought was really spot on. Because I think back to An Unexpected Journey, and and he's playing him like what's the actor's name? Not Hugh Jackman. The British actor is in a lot of romantic comedies. Got caught with a hooker, I think.
There's a few of those. I believe you're referencing Hugh Grant.
That's the one. Yeah, he's kind of playing him as Hugh Grant in the beginning, and he's fainting and he's hemming and hawing, and and he can't quite get the words out. I remember being very impatient with his portrayal of Bilbo at the start of it. It was like, will you just get on with it? And by the end, he's so sure of himself. I'm not afraid of Thorin, and I'm not asking permission, and all this other stuff. This is Thorin's movie. One of the criticisms of the Battle of Five Armies is not enough Bilbo, and this is supposed to be his tale, which I think is a misunderstanding of the book. Because, yes, it's Bilbo's tale, but the Battle of Five Armies is Thorin's story. And this was Thorin's movie. If you haven't read the Hobbit, or if you haven't seen the Bass and Rankin cartoon, Bilbo pretty much sits out the Battle of Five Armies. He doesn't know why they're fighting. He doesn't get it. And he's just like,
and he's knocked unconscious. He's like rendered unconscious 3 minutes into the battle, and he wakes up after it's done.
Yeah, well, I think at one point he's just got the ring on. He's just staying out of it. So like I said, this was really Thorin's tale of redemption, of loss and then redemption. But yeah, I like Martin Freeman's portrayal of Bilbo. And the story and the arc he takes, I thought was very, very well done. I really thought a lot of the acting in this movie was spot on. I know everyone likes to bag on, as she's called, Kate from Lost, but I thought Evangeline Lilly's portrayal of an imaginary character, Toriel, was fine. I mean, we'll get to it, but I thought she did a fine job of what she was given. I really didn't have a problem with anyone's performance.
No, all the acting in this movie was universally, great. This was, I forget whose review of it I read, who mentioned that, after seeing this, you can tell why some of these actors who have been given other projects prior to this movie's release were given them kind of on the strength of their reputation from what they did here. Lee Pace. It was Jeremy Thomas, wasn't it? Or Terry Lewis?
Yeah.
I don't know. The guy on 411 Mania. But no, Lee Pace, who is kind of a one-note villain in, he plays Ronan the Accuser in Guardians of the Galaxy, has a bunch of range here. Again, the character of Thranduil is not, there's motion and emotion there, but he has to do it very subtly because of the way that, an immortal forest elf is kind of by nature. Luke Evans, who has had a couple of different movies kind of come out since then. He was, most notably, he played Dracula in Dracula Untold, but he comes across very, very well in this one. I agree with you about Evangeline Lilly. I don't think her character is necessary or contributes a whole lot, but her acting is fine. The acting is, again, universally good here. I don't know what it was about this time around with Martin Freeman, but the way he just kind of portrays Bilbo, especially that the final kind of ends when he's with a dying Thorin, and then as he's leaving the dwarves, and then as he gets back to his home at Bag End, just kind of the subtle and very real ways that he reacts to everything that's going on there. It was, I'm surprised that I never noticed it before. Maybe he's just that good that what he does is, again, just subtle enough that he slides under the radar, but he's really superb. Or he shares too much screen time with Benedict Cumberbatch, who everyone's watching instead. There's always that possibility.
Can we just say Benedict Cumberbatch is in fucking everything now? There's always like that one actor who like he every time you turn around he's in every picture. And right now Benedict Cumberbatch, I mean, he's been cast as Doctor Strange. He's Smaug. He was the Necromancer. He's classified in the Penguins of Madagascar. He's everywhere.
Yeah, he's doing some work right now, and I'm fine. He's talented. I'm okay with it. But yeah, at the moment, he's kind of in everything. Okay, the other guy I wanted to single out, and we haven't mentioned him yet, but Richard Armitage, who plays Thorin. Him as crazy, greedy, paranoid Thorin Oakenshield was kind of a highlight for me when he was in that, when that character was that particular way. Just watching him kind of be that, crazy and afflicted with, the dragon sickness or whatever they chose to call it.
It was very Hamlet, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, very. Which is not a bad thing.
Yeah. He definitely captured that sort of Shakespearean spirit of paranoia, of power gone mad and paranoia and all of that. Without, as mad as he got, and as a bastard as he became, you were still rooting for him. He never becomes villainous as such. He retains an element of sympathy where you're saying, please, Thorin, come back to us. And I think that's where his performance was so successful, because that could have easily turned into Maleficent.
Yeah. Very easily.
And he doesn't become all twisty mustachy about it. He's just crazy. And he's sick, and you want him to come back and be the hero. And so when he finally does, and they charge, and he joins Dane Ironfoot and charges the orcs and decides, they have to cut the head off the snake, so he goes after Azog. You cheer. It's an awesome cinematic bit where he leads the charge of the dwarves of Erebor, and it's because he never loses that sense of heroism inside. Richard Armitage was very, very careful not to play him as a villain as such, but as a very sick man. Yeah,
there's a distinct difference there, and if you get it wrong, the whole thing is lost. The tone kind of goes out the window when you stop caring about Thorin as far as this goes, because, like you mentioned, most of The Hobbit is actually Thorin's story. Bilbo's just along for the ride, and we get it from his perspective. Especially this particular movie.
Before we went live tonight, you and I kind of were just sort of getting our notes together, and I said that the Battle of Five Armies is Thorin's movie. The reviews that Bilbo, there wasn't enough Bilbo in it. Well, there wasn't enough. Bilbo isn't in a lot of that battle to begin with. That's Thorin's story, and it's his tale to tell of the madness, and then the recovery and the redemption, and dying at Bilbo's feet. Spoiler alert.
The book came out like 70 years ago, people.
It's very reminiscent of Boromir. Boromir succumbs to the madness of the ring, and he retains his dignity and honor by going down fighting, trying to save Merry and Pippin. And Thorin is the same. He redeems himself. He joins in the fight. He takes down Azog, and he dies doing it. And by the end, he tells Bilbo, he did the right thing, and they make amends. And you really see, Bilbo loves Thorin. He doesn't want him to go, and it's sad. And as I said at the top of the review, the girl next to me couldn't keep it together, just bawling. Like I don't know if she's ever lost a relative and cried that much.
Now, there were people in the theater where I was that I wouldn't say went into hysterics, but there were clearly strong emotional reactions, and I got the distinct impression at least 3 of them were not aware that Thorin was going to die.
I would tell you that no one knew. Okay, spoiler alert. No one knew the entire line of Durin was going to get wiped out.
You know, the Mark of Azog, he
that
actually kept his word.
Yeah, yes.
You know, he swore he swore the oath to wipe out the line of Durin, and he succeeded.
And you did it. I don't think people realize that. You know, I don't think people read the books. And you don't necessarily see that a lot. You know, this is where the rebels are supposed to triumph over the Empire. This is where the forces of men and elves and dwarves are supposed to conquer the forces of evil at Mordor. You know, we're supposed to get a happy ending here. Nope.
Not really.
It's a tragic Shakespearean ending where your three heroes fucking buy it in gruesome ways. I mean, not just about Thorin, but Keely and Feely. Oi.
Yeah, that was a rough way for them to go.
Especially Feely. It's like, let's stab you in the back and toss you from a cliff. Ugh.
Yeah, especially since running you through doesn't necessarily kill you right away. I mean, you'll bleed out pretty quickly if the aorta's severed. And you may not feel anything from below the shattered vertebrae, but you're unlikely to actually die before you hit the ground.
No, apparently the only one who can fall from great heights and land on her back are elves. And still live. But I digress. We got about 38 minutes left, and there's still a lot of wrong with this movie.
Yeah, there is. First of all, maybe this is just me, so anyone else out there can disagree with me. Don't try and convince me that Legolas is Kratos. I just don't buy it. Look, Orlando Bloom's fine. The character of Legolas has been established as pretty awesome. I just feel they spent way too much screen time on him fighting within this battle, and him doing, impossible elvy things. Like, oh, how will he get out of this now? Oh, look, he's an elf. He can clearly run up things that are falling, despite gravity not working that way.
Much like our Transformers review, let me give you an argument as to why Tauriel and Legolas were necessary. Beyond the obvious, there are no broads in The Lord of the Rings, so they needed a broad in there because it's 2014 and, women. So, I don't even need to entertain the stupid argument. They're right. It's true. I just don't want to be bothered with it. It's an obvious one. So let's talk about why I feel Legolas and Tauriel were necessary in the story. Obviously, in the book, it's a children's book, number one, and the Wood Elves are pretty much just established in the book so that later on they can be brought back up again in the Battle of the Five Armies. That's it. That's their whole purpose. The thing of it is that if you don't create characters or reuse characters to give the elves a face, something that you can identify with, then I don't think there's any interest in them from a cinematic point of view. I think you can get away with that in a book. Like people to read the book say, Gandalf would just disappear in parts of the book, and you kind of get away with that, in a narrative. But on screen, if a character just disappears, you need to address that. And where did this character go? And that's why you have all of the stuff with Gandalf going to Dol Guldur and all this other stuff. It's the same thing with the Wood Elves. If you don't, I'm going to use the word human here. If you don't humanize the elves in some way, then when you need people to buy into them, people won't, because you haven't spent any time with them. The art of making a movie is, and I think this gets lost on reviewers at times, which is really funny to me because, you're supposed to be a professional movie reviewer, yet some of these people don't seem to understand how film works. If the audience doesn't spend time with characters, then nothing you do to them will matter. It's kind of like in a horror movie, which you've been on this show many times talking about. You're just setting up fodder to get murdered, and then you're just watching porn. So for me, they didn't have to create a character from whole cloth. they just reused Legolas because people already had an attachment to him.
Well, Orlando Bloom needs something to do. He's not done anything in a couple of years.
The barrels down the river in the book, I think they just float down the river.
Yeah.
They
float down without incident in the book, but we get a fun action sequence out. In the book, it's just they hid in barrels and floated down the river. We get a fun action sequence out of it in the movies.
Right. And so how do you kind of turn up the volume on that? We'll throw an elf in there who's also a ninja, shooting at shit. You know, again,
I don't have a problem with Legolas being in these movies. I have a problem with you trying to convince me that he's again, it's not so much that he's there. I don't mind that he's there. I'm with you as far as we need characters that represent the Wood Elves that we actually care about, because their king is kind of a dick, so we don't care.
Right.
But Legolas is a good guy, so we like him.
If you don't have Legolas there to kind of sell you on the fact that not every Wood Elf is a bastard, by the time Thranduil gets there, you're like, fuck, kill him. You know? And then it gets confusing because you don't want Bard to die and you don't want to root against the humans, but now they've teamed up with the evil elves. So, I
don't have a problem with Legolas being there. I felt there was too much of Legolas. That's my complaint.
Okay, here's where I agree with you. In the Battle of the Five Armies, they gave Legolas the sort of side quest where him and Tauriel go to Angmar, and I felt like it was a throwaway sequence. They get there, they see Bolg marching the army out, and then they run back. You know, there was no peril, there was nothing to it. It was, you know, he might as well stood there with a sign that said, "This is Bolg and his army." Like, I would have liked to have seen him. I would have liked for him to have gone on a mission to try to stop the army and fail. You know, something along those lines. That's the thing. Like, maybe like another way they could have done it was that in between movies they sent Legolas to Angmar to try to stop it, and he gets captured, and Tauriel goes after him. You know, like Tauriel gets word from the king that, you know, that he's been captured, and, you know, while they're there, she needs to go get him. That sort of thing, and I think that would have sufficed. But instead, it was like, I don't think people got it. You know, I'm watching this, and I'm like, well, here's a funky looking castle, and there's an army marching, and Legolas sort of uses the moment as a bit of exposition to talk about why his father's a dick.
Yeah,
that's kind of it for you.
Yeah, again, if you're going to go through all that effort to have, you know, again, the side quest, and they go up, you could have at least done something with it other than 2 lines of exposition. We went through all of this effort for 2 lines of exposition that could have been worked into a couple of other different places. Instead, we do all this effort, and we don't get anything else out of it.
Let me address the often lamented, often criticized love story between Keeley and Tauriel. And
stupid.
I liked it, but I think I liked it because there was a payoff. Even if it was sort of rushed and a bit hackneyed, when she's sitting there and she had Taco Bell for dinner, and she's holding Keeley, and they had already addressed this earlier in the movie about, you know, how love feels, and she's never experienced it before. She's told she can't love the prince, and she's sort of, you know, got to be this militarized chick, and she's got to keep her feelings about anything bottled up, and they just come exploding out with this dwarf, and then he's dead. You know, before anything can even begin, he's died, killed on the battlefield, and so she's holding him, and she looks up at Thranduil and she says, you know, why does it hurt so much? And to me, that qualified the entire storyline for me, the entire subplot. You know,
if you're going to have it, we had a decent resolution to it, and it was another moment for Thranduil not to be a dick.
Right.
Is kind of the thing. Because it's, you know, a moment of, again, elf, not human, but it's a moment of humanization for him. And we don't get that very often with him, and we get it there at the end when he sees Tauriel and he provides a little bit of comfort for her. Very little, but again, Elf King, and most elves are dicks. This has long been established as like fact and fantasy.
Vulcan.
Something like that.
Pointy bastards, they all are. But no, that's right. There's a bit of humanization there. There's a bit of tenderness. And I really, again, movies are supposed to make you feel something, and maybe I'm a big sap, but when Tauriel says, why does it hurt so much, I felt bad for her. She whatever, call it what you will, a wasted subplot, whatever, but this character lost love, and it hurts, and it was well portrayed on screen. So I forgive the entire subplot for that reason.
I still think it was stupid. Its existence to me, its existence to me was superfluous and stupid. It was handled very well, and which is about as much as I could have hoped to have personally gotten out of it. Again, I don't feel any of it with her and him was necessary, or her in general, apart from, feminazis type thing. But if you're going to do it, it was done well. And so again, my criticism is more subjective to my personal taste and feel about how the overall thing should have been presented, as opposed to how it was done. Because it was, it was executed and handled about as good as it could have been. So my complaints are minimal.
Let's talk a little bit about the opening of the movie with the attack on Lake Town.
Not enough Smaug. In this whole movie, not enough Smaug. Because Smaug is awesome.
Well, I'll tell you, my favorite part of the second one, the Desolation of Smaug, is that interaction between him and Bilbo. Again, so well acted by Martin Freeman. Who are you? I am he who walks unseen. And how he delivers all of those things. And Benedict Cumberbatch just gets them. It was perfect tennis. He would just bat the ball right back at him.
That should be shocking to anyone, that Martin Freeman and Benedict Cumberbatch have great repartee.
Barrel Rider. Oh, that's interesting. Lovely titles. I do that now.
Tell me more.
Lovely titles. But the end of that movie, as much as everyone sort of makes fun of as it's been called, the most elaborate dragon trap ever, as silly as that whole sequence is, and it really is retarded. The acting on Benedict Cumberbatch's part towards the end there, where he mocks Thorin, he's like, "Revenge! I will show you revenge."
Yeah.
And he springs out of Erebor, and he shakes the gold off of him, and he says, "I am fire, I am death." And flashback to Bilbo, what have we done? And it's perfect. And then you get to this movie, and this is where you want more mustache twirling. It's his last hurrah before he's about to get taken down. And it was almost like, I don't know how you felt about it, but I felt like there wasn't enough Smaug.
There could always have been more Smaug.
He didn't say enough. He was setting the place on fire, but I really wanted him to show true malice. Maybe it would have been too much, but I actually wanted there to be scenes where he would just land and corner a bunch of Lake Town women and just blow them up. How dare you? That sort of thing.
No, I would have been fine with that. I mean, he gets a few lines of dialogue directed at Bard as Bard is lining up his shot with the black arrow, which I enjoyed. I liked how they did that. In this particular movie, instead of him using the traditional bow, he sets it on his son's shoulder because it's a large arrow. He needs extra oomph to come out of it. Smaug kind of walking forward is perfect and menacing. I thought from the perspective of the people of Lake Town, the dragon attack was well done. There's plenty of people dying, plenty of things lighting on fire. Smaug is plenty menacing in an abstract sense. But I'm with you in that they could have drugged that out a little bit more and had him interact a little bit more with all the people there that he's, again, murdering violently with fire.
Yeah, this is your last hurrah with this horrible creature, and there wasn't enough. I needed more Smaug. But you're right. But once he gets to taunting Bard, and he's
awesome
about to,
again.
he's like,
look,
I'm going to kill
Smaug
your
as
son.
Smaug as the flying, fire-breathing, silent menace figure of death is not as good. Smaug, when he's talking, is all kinds of awesome.
Yeah, he in wrestling parlance, he needs to call his own match.
Yeah, pretty much. But his death was fine. I got to be honest, though, I really wish Smaug had landed on the other guy instead of Stephen Fry.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a second. So
speaking of useless characters.
Well, we talked about this before, so now is as good as any time to address it, because there's two things dealing with the men of Lake Town that I have to complain about. One, when he shoots Smaug and Smaug falls out of the sky and he lands on the master of the lake, as he's trying to get away with all of the gold. Okay, great, evil's punished. I want to throw this at you before I start wildly complaining about Alfred. With all that they did with Alfred, by the way, if you look at the map of Middle-earth, which I did last night because I'm a nerd, and I'm trying to figure out where all these places are and how the paths, Bilbo's path versus Frodo's path and all of that, and why they went this way and that way, and that sort of thing. I was looking at where Erebor is in relationship to the rest of the world. Where the fuck is Alfred going at the end of the movie? I'm skipping around here, but because I want to come back to something. But at the very end, he's dressed up like a woman. He's got a bra corset. He's got a corset full of gold, except that he's in Dale. And Dale is surrounded by a lake. And on the opposite side of that lake is the backyard of the Woodland Realm. Where the fuck was he going with the gold?
I don't know. That was one of the things that kind of bothered me, like when Bard is petitioning Thorin for his promised payment to help rebuild the lives of all the people who were displaced by the dragon. I remember thinking, he could have given you all the gold in that freaking mountain, and you still would have frozen to death in winter. It's of no value to you right now. You're in the middle of nowhere. You can have all the gold you want. You're still going to die.
I think what was implied was that what they would use whatever resources were in Erebor to help people, including let them into the damn mountain. But
which would have been my request were I Bard. We'll forego some of our claim on the treasure if you just take us into this giant mountain. We'll work, but we need a place to ride out the winter here.
I want to propose this to you, because I think you and I both agree Alfred was a completely useless character.
Oy.
I mean, in some of the reviews I read, he's supposed to be like comic relief, except that it's one joke repeated 10 times and 9 times too many. Now, if they were going to do the bit where at the end he makes no character change whatsoever, he has no journey. He just, at the end of it, he sort of, the message to the audience is, even in our most greatest peril, when all men come together and put aside petty grievances, some of us are just bags of shit. And will never change. Okay, message received. Why then, when they wrote this, did they just not make him Grimer Wormtongue? Make him a young Grimer Wormtongue working in Lake Town, and if they're going to have him run off into the wilderness then have him be Grimer Wormtongue and just like, I will go to Rohan. I want no part of you, Bard. I want no part of this waste of humanity. I will go to Rohan, and I will pledge myself to Theoden. And that sets up the fucking Two Towers.
Well, believe it or not, I think the biggest problem with that and some of the other problems I have with a few things here is the chronology of it, which it gets conveniently ignored at certain points, and I'll get to in a second or two. But my issue with that is if you want the guy to be nothing but pointless comic relief, you should have killed Alfred and let Stephen Fry stick around, because Stephen Fry is awesome. I mean, you could have done the exact same thing in the beginning where the Master climbs out of the water, begging and screaming for his life, and the people revolt against him because of all the crap he's put them through, and Bard saves him. Same reasoning. Again, imagine everything, but you now have you don't just have the writing there. You have Stephen Fry, who is one of the great comedic actors there is right now. I mean, because again, I think Stephen Fry is awesome. And you could have done, I just imagine his presence would have added a lot more interesting stuff to what was going on there instead of this useless, slimy bag of shit. I kept wondering, why doesn't Bard just kill him? I mean, you save him from the mob and you make your big speech about pulling together and humanity and have you not seen enough of death, and that's all valid. For the third time, when he tries to sell out the rest of humanity and run away with the gold, at that point I'm just like, all right, enough. I have not yet seen enough death. I'm going to kill you, and then we're going to be done with it.
Well, again, I would have accepted one of two things. And I like your idea of at least keeping Stephen, the Master of Lake Town, alive. But let me sort of unravel this for you. They should have dropped the dragon on him. They should have had him stay in the boat with the Master of Lake Town, drop the dragon on him, and be done with it. In the book,
that would have worked just fine.
In the book, they actually coronate Bard as king, and I really feel like the movie was missing something by not doing that and making even they could have still done the reluctant leader thing, but at the very end of the movie, when after they've driven off the orcs and he has proved himself a capable general, the movie should have left you with the knowledge that he has become King Bard. He has sort of regretfully taken the mantle of leadership of Dale, but whatever. A great way they could have played that is exactly as you said. Drop the dragon on Alfred, keep Stephen Fry alive, and let that be sort of a conflict in the movie. Is that the people want Bard, but he's like, no, I'm the Master of Lake Town, damn it! And just because there's no Lake Town doesn't mean I'm not the master. And let them argue. I think that would have been a more interesting conflict than basically, Grimer Wormtongue the First running around being a bag of shit.
No, I completely agree there. I need to say this. I don't miss that they didn't officially, crown him king or what have you. I know they do that in the book, and I think it takes up 2 chapters with him describing, the celebrations and the feast and what have you, because that's the way Tolkien writes. I was absolutely terrified we would get... Now, we get Bard as kind of the reluctant leader here, and when I saw they were going that direction, I was terrified we were going to get too much of it. Thankfully, we didn't. It's there, it's part of his character, but it's not overbearing. It doesn't beat you over the head with it. For anyone who's seen the movie by this point, or is listening to this after they've seen it, I was terrified that we would have gotten another 10 to 15 minutes of him being reluctant leader, as opposed to what we actually got. What we actually got was fine. That's kind of how I want those things to go.
Speaking of leaders, I want to get this out there before we run out of time, and we have about 16, 17 minutes left before we go into recorded time, and I don't want the review to take too long. You're left at the end of the movie not knowing who is king under the mountain, because Thorin's dead, Feely's dead, Keely's dead, and there's no successor to the crown. The line of Durin is broken. And if you read the Wikipedia entries like I did, or if you've read the appendices of the Tolkien novels, you know that Dane Ironfoot, played by Billy Connolly, is actually the ends up being the successor to the throne. We got none of that in this movie, and I felt like of all the time spent on this, that, and the other thing, really 5 minutes to tell you that Dane, the Dane of the Iron Hills, wasn't made king. I mean, you and I talked before the podcast started. As Bilbo's saying goodbye, they couldn't have had Balin mention it. At the very least, I understand
it's
we
a
didn't want to
line.
do another.
It's a sentence of dialogue that they could have thrown in there. No, look, I don't want another Return of the King where we spend 5 minutes with Aragorn being crowned king of Gondor, and then that whole thing. I don't want, we don't need the long goodbye again here. Okay, we really don't.
Right, we don't need multiple endings.
You can answer questions that are left. I mean, again, for those of you who've seen the movie, Frodo's walking out of Erebor with Balin by his side. He's leaving. He's all packed. He's ready to go. And Balin says, there's going to be feasting and songs and celebration, and this serves both as Thorin's funeral and celebrating their victory in the battle. And you couldn't have had another sentence of, the new king, or we'll be crowning him in a few weeks type thing. You couldn't have just, again, a line of minor exposition.
They could have had Bilbo simply ask.
Who's king? So what are you going to do now? The line of Durin's ended. Who's going to rule here? And Balin's like, well, actually, Dane Ironfoot is still technically of the line of Durin, thrice removed on his mother's side, so he's perfectly acceptable as king, and you saw what he could do on the battlefield. We'll be fine.
Right. You don't even have to go into that. Dane will be coronated king. We will be fine.
Oh, no, they would have used, my line just because, dwarven lineage, and the guy who played Balin was awesome, by the way, just as a brief aside, kind of the old dwarf.
I have some issues with Balin, but that's for another podcast. My favorite one is whatever the fat one's name is.
Bomber, I think, is that one.
Bomber, yeah. I thought Bomber was definitely one of my favorites in there. Like this, him. I don't want to spend too long on this, but the sequence, as much as it's been panned by critics, the sequence of him bouncing in the barrel and then bursting out with 2 axes and spinning around, it's just awesome to look. It's an awesome spectacle.
It is. Oh, God. Come on, have some fun with the movies, people.
So, the dueling boss fights between Thorin and Azog, and then Legolas and Balrog, or whatever that Bog. It was fun. I don't really have anything to add about those because they were just long extended fight scenes.
Too much time wasted on Legolas. Too much time with him and that other dude. Wait, no. Not that it's there. Too much time with Legolas and that other dude. Too much.
Well, that's the thing is they, people were wondering who the Fifth Army was, and it was the Eagles. Which, okay, let me address this now, because I'm tired of everyone saying this isn't like in CinemaSins, it's in the honest trailers. People are still saying it, including, God bless you guys, the guys from Screaming Boy Podcast. The reason the fucking Eagles don't just take people to Mordor like a cab service or take the dwarves to the Lonely Mountain is because there are men, orcs, elves, and anyone else, not elves, but men and orcs and dwarves who would shoot them out of the sky so they could barbecue them. That's why. The Eagles don't want to be shot down trying to transverse all of Middle-earth. They're not a cab service. They got Gandalf out of a fix, and they got the dwarves out of a fix, and they rescued Bilbo after he saved all of Middle-earth.
Frodo.
Jesus Christ, people. One more question about why the Eagles just don't solve all their problems. But anyway.
And I don't suppose it ever occurred to anybody that the Eagles, that they asked and the Eagles told them, piss off.
Yeah, well,
the Eagles and Beorn and that whole Fifth Army of, woodland creatures that show up, they show up because Radagast asked them to.
Right.
Now, nobody, again, Gandalf on occasion is able to maybe convince them to show up and help him out of a jam for a few minutes. They're not actually risking their necks anytime they don't have to. And Radagast Brown, who, has his ability to commune with all of nature, requests that they show up and help here, and they do. But they're not, again, they're not a catch-all.
The thing is that they'll get shot out of the sky, so they don't want to expose themselves too much. But the other thing of it is when the Eagles show up in the Battle of Pelennor Field, did the Eagles show up? No.
The final charge on Mordor. They show up to stop the Ringwraiths from being airborne. And even then, some of them die.
I'm trying to think of another situation where the Eagles showed up and killed a bunch of people. I don't know if it's Helm's Deep or something else, but there's something where like the Eagles just start murdering. It might be the end of An Unexpected Journey where they're attacking the wargs. But
yeah, they show up and help out away from Azog and that pack of orcs. But
okay, in any case, I would have liked to have seen, the dwarves sort of on their last legs, and and the men. They had that one flash with the women going, "Let's die by the side of our men. Let's fight by their side. Not cower here like a bunch of women." I would have liked to have seen that. I would have liked to have seen the women fighting with the men and everyone just sort of feeling, like we can't do this. There's too many orcs. And that's when Radagast and the Eagles and I wanted to see a good 2-3 minutes of Beorn just tearing into orcs.
Yeah, look, this is one of my big gripes with this movie. It seems like the Eagles show up, and completely away from everything else, Thorin finally kills Azog. Somehow, this knowledge is transmitted to the rest of the thousands and thousands and thousands of orcs who just decide, all right, that's it. There's giant birds. We could shoot them, but no, our leader's dead. How do you know he's dead? We haven't seen him. We haven't heard from him. He could be doing other stuff. No. This long, he's dead. We're packing it in.
Yeah, they all suffer from Emperor's disease from Return of the Jedi. Like, what? The Emperor's dead? We have minds of our own? We're getting the fuck out of here.
We've still got a giant armada, all this manpower, all this firepower. The Empire's not doomed. No, they got the Death Star and the Emperor. No, we're hosed here, everybody. Let's just disband this giant machine of war and conquest. Now,
everyone becomes Denethor.
Yeah, look, it's a gripe that was kind of my big gripe was Thorin, mortally wounded, stands at the precipice of that frozen lake and sees them sees the orcs and everyone retreating, and I kind of went, wait, what caused this? What turn of events happened on the actual battlefield that caused the orcs to go, nope, we're done?
Yeah, there was
happened.
Too much focus. There was too much focus on the boss battles and not enough on the battle. I wanted to see the Eagles turn the tide. I wanted to see Beorn. I wanted to see Radagast, do his thing. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, Radagast's purpose in all of this and his only ability was to speak in tongues and save sickly animals. At least you got to see Saruman fight the Nazgul.
I don't care how old Christopher Lee is. That man can still be a badass when he wants to be.
Okay, so a couple more gripes about things they did versus what they could have done. That whole sequence in Dol Guldur where Galadriel saves Mithrandir, Gandalf, from the cage, and essentially from Sauron, it was way rushed. And if you don't know anything else about the story, you think Sauron's dead. It's never really explicitly explained that he's driven back to Mordor. It's never explained that the Nazgul were driven back to Mordor. You would think after Elrond and Saruman were done with that group that they were just dead, that they were gone. Because they just disappear and nothing is said about it. I mean, Saruman, I think, says, "Leave Sauron to me." But
it's like a throwaway line. I believe it's a throwaway line that he'll take hold in the East. And it's really sad because, again, a little bit more exposition here could have just fleshed out the whole thing. Not hours and hours, but, a few more lines, a couple of sentences would have been fine and dandy.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen... Look, they lost an opportunity for a great visual, which is the necromancer, Sauron, being that black cloud of smoke just flying through Mordor, and you could have kind of done a tracking shot, and then seeing him rise to his tower and be that eye.
Yeah, they absolutely could have done that. I think something you mentioned off air to me about maybe a little bit of Saruman tracking him down and slowly becoming corrupted by his influence.
Yeah, I would have liked, I would have liked a break from the battle of the Five Armies to, where did Saruman go, and have him be with the Palantir and let him start to be just a flash of, a face, a reaction, a flash of corruption, something that tells us that somewhere between him heroically saving Gandalf and the Fellowship of the Ring, he's given up the ship. He's going to join with Sauron rather. But I mean, like I said, the Nazgul, this, the Nazgul were summarily defeated, and then what? They're going to show up again. They're going to don cloaks and they're going to put on armor and they're going to chase after the ring.
Yeah, again, a bit of dialogue. A bit of dialogue from Elrond saying, well, he could just easily say, well, we've temporarily banished their aspects, but they're not defeated yet. They broke out of their magical tombs. They'll come back. Him kind of setting up what Saruman sets out to do by further trying to crush Sauron while he's still weak would have gone a long way to kind of just setting up everything else.
I mean, what they should have had Gandalf basically saying, someone saying the Nazgul are defeated for now, but as long as the One Ring exists, so too will the Nazgul. And that
would have been fine as well. All right, we're down to 3 minutes of live time. I know we want to end this pretty much on time. I need to get my final kind of gripe out of the way here, and then I'm going to be done, and we'll give final thoughts. The chronology here. There's something specifically here. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but we open this, not just this movie, but Unexpected Journey opens, we get the flashback to young Bilbo, and the caption reads 60 years earlier. Rather firmly establishing that this event takes place 60 to 59, because they were gone for 13 months. Let's call it 60 years prior to Bilbo's 111th birthday party that sets up Fellowship of the Ring. Okay, this is all very clear. So here's my question to you, Mark. How frickin' old is Aragorn by the time they actually destroy the ring?
Well, I think he says it in The Two Towers. He's 70. He's doing somewhere between 70 and 77.
Really? Because I forgot.
Yeah.
I was not aware of that. Because he...
No, here, I'll tell you what, really, really quickly.
All right.
During March to Helm's Deep, when he's talking to the one broad that's got a crush on him, whose name I do not recall, he explains to her that he is one of the Dunedain, the do your dance quick, come on baby, tell me what's the word, and she's like, wait, you fought with my father, and what, fuck, that must mean you're 70 some odd years old. And that's, oh no, he does, okay, first he was like, I fought with your father. I was like, but that was so long ago, that would make you 70. And he's like, you're one of the Dunedain, or Dunedain, or whatever the hell they're called. But by the way,
hang on, does that come from the extended cut version? Because I haven't seen the extended Two Towers. I've only seen the theatrical.
I don't know. That's the version I watched recently, was the extended version, but I don't recall that being a cut scene. Because I remember seeing that in the movies too, but I may also be misremembering because I saw the extended edition of The Two Towers in the movie theater.
Yeah. I just seem to recall that the theatrical cut of that, the only thing they talk about is the jewel that he wears and him actually being in love with an elf.
No, there's a whole conversation that takes place where he explains that he's one of the Dunedain and that he's in his 70s.
Okay. Then I will. I either missed it or again or I have not seen the version that explains it properly, because I was under the impression he was about as old as he looked, which was 30s. So, okay, I will cease my complaints about the chronology as far as that one goes then.
Oh, here, we'll make it up with this.
Apparently he's 87.
Then I will tell you what the complaint you should have had was. We're heading back to the Woodland Realm. I'm not going back. Okay, go to the north, find the Dunedain. There you'll find Strider. By the way, that's not his real name. You'll figure that out for yourself. What?
I'll tell you its father's real name. Like, wait a minute. Okay, I get his dad's real name, but I get the 13, 14-year-old kid. I get his crappy nickname. What's going on?
Yeah. I that whole seek out Strider, and it was like, and then it was kind of like we just left him hanging there because I'm waiting for him to if you're gonna send Legolas off on a mission because he refuses to return home because he's lost the love of his life, which is Tauriel, then okay, fine, but then tell me why he must go seek out the Dunedain. What is their purpose? What is his mission? Because I can only imagine how that meeting goes. They're like, oh, I'm Legolas of the Woodland Realm. I am Strider, Ranger of the North. Good for you.
What's your name?
And now we
my crazy old man sent me out here. That's what it was. They're both the rough equivalent of teenagers, so they bonded over their mutual disdain of their crazy old fathers.
Yeah, I don't understand it. that whole I mean, it was that of all the connections to the trilogy that people complained about, that one was so forced. And
it didn't bother me as much. It actually didn't bother me as much as it seems to have bothered you. You've got Thranduil who's having the break with his son. His son's, got issues with how his father's ruling and some of those other things, and he's got to go off to find himself, so his father points him in a direction that he thinks might benefit everyone eventually. Doesn't bother me as much. I agree that it's kind of shoehorned in. I mean, the scene is kind of shoehorned, but it doesn't bother me that much.
It was like the line from the second movie where they're looking at the picture in the necklace and look at, who is that? That's my wife, and who is this mutant thing?
Some kind of goblin mutant. Well, it is Gimli's father saying it. I don't know. It's a little thing. That one didn't bother me either. I don't know.
That one by itself didn't bother me, but the collection of forced references to the trilogy drove me up the wall by the end of it. I was like, oh, just if it doesn't come naturally, please just stop. Stop forcing it. But those are my, whenever we do these movie reviews, it's always like, well, I wish they had done this and that rather than just kind of complain about stuff. I think overall they spent way too much time on the boss battles, not enough time on the actual battle itself. And, there were all these different things where they don't really tie up any of the loose ends. They just sort of leave them hanging there. And I think that's the ultimate, I don't know if failure is the right word, but that is the ultimate problem with this movie was there was an opportunity, because everyone was complaining like they shouldn't have stretched it out into 3 movies. I disagree. I think it worked well as a trilogy. I liked the story they were telling.
I think they could have done it in 2. It just would have 2 movies would have just been a lot more streamlined.
Well, as I said, the one criticism that I've seen consistently throughout a lot of reviews that I do agree with is that Peter Jackson, I think, spent too much time on frivolous things and not enough time on the things that mattered in the story. Some of the stuff that we talked about, I think, would have made a little bit more sense to spend some time on instead of, it would seem like hours spent on meaningless shit.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, just overall, since we're going to go ahead and do our final thoughts here and wrap up, because I know you again want to end kind of on time. And apparently I've got something to do in a couple of minutes here. So overall, again, to kind of restate, big fan of this. I enjoyed this movie a lot. I'm not sure if because I think the first one is still my favorite of the Hobbit trilogy, but I very much enjoyed this one overall. I mean, again, all the griping about the small things and whatnot aside, on the whole, it's a very good movie. It's a great way to kind of wrap up all of the cinematic entries into Middle-earth.
Yep. I thought, as I said at the top of the show, I thought it was a love letter to everybody in a great way to go out. I actually, I thought it was a good way to cap off 6 movies. Again, I'm good now with this series. I don't need to sing anymore.
Yeah, I'm with you there. We can be done. No, we don't need any more, Middle-earth movies. And again, as mentioned previously, the Tolkien estate won't sell the rights anyway. So at the moment,
I was going to say, if Peter Jackson really wants to make more Sword and Sandal movies, more fantasy movies, seek out the studio who has the rights to the Dragonlance books and make those. There's plenty of them. He never has to leave that world.
I'm just not a big fan of those books, but okay.
Give me a movie just about the Cataclysm, and I'll be happy.
All right. Okay, so anything you want to plug, Mark?
Tomorrow night at 9 o'clock, Jesse Starcher, who joined me on our holiday edition of... sorry, I just got a message from Gavin. Tomorrow night, he joined me on the Metal Hammer of Doom last week with a brief shout out to Jason Teasley as we did our holiday special, doing a retrospective of Weird Al Yankovic. It was a great show. We did almost 3 hours. I just listened to it back. It was a lot of fun. He'll be back again tomorrow night as we do our Christmas edition of The Long Road to Ruin. We'll be looking at Gremlins 1 and 2. And maybe a little, we'll play some Christmas carols while we're there. Who knows? And then that's it. Our schedule for the 2015 has been ironed out. I can tell you in January is Star Trek and Lethal Weapon. Not sure which one's going to be first, but we're going to... I'm not going to go into specifics, but I can tell you as far as dates, but I can tell you that we've got franchises now planned from January to May, and a couple of ones that we're looking at doing, Star Trek, 2, 3, and 4. We're looking at Lethal Weapon. We're looking to do Blade, Darkman. We're looking to do the Highlander movie series, Fantastic Four. We're going to finish up Rocky. The Jack Ryan, Tom Clancy movies, all 5 of them, we're looking to do, and then when Age of Ultron comes out, we'll do Iron Man. So that's the rough schedule for and we're going to throw the Fantastic Four in there too. So that's our 2015 schedule between January and May, roughly. And those of you who are just waiting for Sean to come back. He comes back the first week of February where we'll be doing the Fantastic Four.
And you have to talk about how the fact that Roger Corman's unreleased, 1986 version is still the best film adaptation of the Fantastic Four out there, apart from Pixar's The Incredibles.
No doubt. All right, that's it. That's all I got. I mean, as far as the other shows, check out the Radulich Broadcasting Network, RADULICH. Every day of the week is a new show. With a different host, and they're all great. You should listen to them all, including Rob's shows.
I only have one show at the moment. I've got Everyone Loves a Bad Guy on temporary hiatus for the holidays and a couple of other reasons. But every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, I host the 411 Ground and Pound radio show, which looks into the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts. Jeff Harris is normally there with me. Our last episode, we previewed this coming Friday or Saturday's Fight Night card, Machida versus Dalloway, which I will be covering live at 411mania.com this coming Saturday. So stop by, say hello. I might need it to get through some of these fights. We got a good couple of top fights, but the rest of the card is suspect. All right, that's going to go ahead and wrap us up. We will be back officially kind of reviewing movies once the summer blockbuster season for 2015 gets rolling, whenever we deem that to be an appropriate time to start doing this. Maybe if something really awesome comes out between now and then, we'll do one-ofs kind of like this. But to everyone else, thank you all so very much for being here. Mark and I are both going to encourage you to go see the third and final Hobbit movie and formulate your own opinions in addition to agreeing with our own, because we're clearly correct about all of these things that we discuss. That's the benefit of being us. All right, until then, I'll use Mark's sign-off phrase, be well, be safe, and behave.
I saw the light fade from the sky. On the wind I heard a sigh as the snowflakes cover my fallen brothers, I will say this last goodbye. Night is now falling, so end this day. The road is now calling, and I must away over hill and under tree, through lands where never light is shone, by silver streams that run down to the sea. Under clouds, beneath the stars, over snow on winter's morn, I turn at last to paths that lead home. And oh, where the road then takes me, I cannot tell. We came all this way, but now comes the day to bid you farewell. Many places I have been, many sorrows